When Norman Powell starts the Toronto Raptors, not only does it seem like Norman Powell himself improves a lot, but the Raptors as a whole are a much better team with him on the court. So, do the stats tell the truth and confirm this? And should the Raptors start Norman Powell permanently? Let's get into it. Welcome to Amateur Sports. This is the channel where you get NBA content with a focus on the Toronto Raptors at least 4 days a week, plus 3 live streams a week. So if it is your first time here with me today and you like what you see, you want more of myself talking about the Toronto Raptors in videos or content just like this, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below. Show your support, join the movement of the channel as we get very close to 2,000 subscribers on the channel. Very much awaiting that milestone. Thank you all for the support. By the way, we are live streaming tonight for the game against the Sacramento Kings. Took a break on Wednesday, but if you would like to be there tonight, join the watch along for the game. Going to be a lot of fun yet again. But today's video, we are talking about Norman Powell as a starter. And it seems like Norman Powell is a completely different player when he starts versus when he comes off the bench. Typically, last season he had a lot of opportunities in both endeavors where there was a lot of injuries, so he did have to start a lot of games, and had a great season last year. Shot basically 50, 40, 84 from the field, and also put up over 16 points per game. A very much career year for Norman Powell, and I was really hoping for that to continue this season, to be our sixth man, because I think Norman Powell is one of the best six mans in the entire NBA. The stuff he brings off the bench, just pure shooting, pure scoring. It's exactly what you want from your sixth man. But all of a sudden, Norman Powell is really making a case for himself as a starter for this Toronto Raptors team, because yes, eye test and stat wise, Norman Powell is much better when he starts versus when he comes off the bench. And the Raptors eye test when Norman Powell starts, it seems like they're a better, more put together team when Norman Powell's on the court with another point guard rather than the 2 point guard system that the Raptors have typically run over the last year or so. So in this video, we're going to get into the stats about Norman Powell as a starter, how it bodes for himself, how it bodes for the Raptors, and then if we were to start him, who do you take out? So let's start with the statistics about this situation. So Norman Powell, as a starter this season, he started 7 games so far this season. And in those 7 games, Norman Powell has put up over 20 points per game on better than 50% shooting from the field, better than 43% shooting from 3, as well as 86% from the free throw line. So those are immediately very impressive numbers, shockingly impressive numbers. Those are fantastic. Again, it's a pretty small sample size, only 7 games, but in those 7 games, my goodness, has Norman Powell been on fire as a starter. And it seems like a lot of this can be down to the balance of positions when Norman Powell is in the court. Typically, we start with Lowry and Fred VanVleet, our point guard duo. They start the game at point guard and shooting guard. You have your small forward and OG Anunoby, power forward Pascal Siakam, and typically you'll start Aaron Baines at the 5, who has been a lot better recently. But Norman Powell, when he comes into the lineup, adds a bit more size to the team playing at the shooting guard position and lets the point guard do his thing. There's only one guy who's that pure ball handling playmaker in the point guard position rather than 2 of them. And, Fred VanVleet has been very impressive this year. Lowry has been above what he was last season. When he was an all-star last season, Lowry is playing above that level already this season. So it's hard to take those guys out. But when you put in one pure playmaker for Norman Powell to play at shooting guard, it seems like the Raptors are better at flowing their offense. And it also seems like Norman Powell is really good at, knocking down shots and attacking the rim, being ferocious at the rim, getting slams, getting tough layups, and just being a difference maker on the court. Compare those 20 points per game along with the 50% and 40% field goal percentages. Norman Powell as a whole on this season averages about 14 points per game on 43% shooting and about 41% shooting from 3. So those splits are quite telling. He averages 6 points per game better when he starts. He shoots the ball about 7% better as a starter, and the 3 ball about 2% better. So yes, Norman Powell does thrive in the element in which he starts, but he's been starting a lot of games recently. So would he be able to bring that off the bench? Let's say, we're a fully healthy team again. OG Anunoby, let's say he's back tonight. Kyle Lowry's healthy again. Pascal Siakam is healthy again. Let's say we have everybody back. Would Norman Powell still be able to produce this off the bench? That's something I wonder. I don't know, because he has not been great when he's come off the bench. And, early on this season when he did start in the game against the New York Knicks, Norman Powell was on fire over the course of that game. And Norman Powell has been on fire and was utterly spectacular against the Bucks on Wednesday night. So Norman Powell has been great, and he has definitely earned himself the right to push the boundaries of that starting lineup? Can he really get himself integrated into that starting lineup? And he's really making it tough on Nick Nurse to make this decision. Now typically when you have a lot of people fighting for starting spots, let's say there's a big competition for starting spots in your team, that can't be a bad thing, because that means you have so much talent that people are pushing to get into the starting lineup. But it also means that these guys have this bit of friendly competition within the team to push themselves to be better, because Fred, Kyle, who are starting now, know, okay, if I don't fix up, if I'm not playing well, Norman Powell's easily just going to come in and take my starting spot. So you really have to perform to that standard. Now, I think Nick Nurse is going to be absolutely 100% reluctant to start Norman Powell. And if everybody is healthy, Norman Powell will not be starting for the Toronto Raptors, because Nick Nurse has a huge reluctance to have any change to his system, any change to his plans. He wants to keep it exactly the same. It is very rare. You seldom see Nick Nurse change up a starting lineup, change up a game plan over the course of a game. He likes to stick to status quo, win his way or the highway. So he's going to stick with the main starting five. But as Raptors fans, as a person myself who talks about the Raptors on my platform, I think that it would be worth changing. I think it would be worth looking into this change and trying it out, putting Norman Powell into the starting lineup. If it doesn't work out, then just go back to normal. But there's no sense of not trying it, because clearly Norman Powell plays well as a starter, and the Raptors are 4-3 when Norman Powell starts, contrary to their 7-11 total record. They are 4-3 when Norman Powell starts, but I'm not going to count the game he started against the Golden State Warriors, because they started small in that game. They started both point guards, Norman Powell at the small forward position, Pascal Siakam at the 4, and OG Anunoby at the 5. So that was a different lineup. That still had the two guards. But when Norman Powell starts with another point guard and Norman Powell's playing shooting guard, the Raptors are 4-2, and they look much better in those situations. So yes, I am ready to try it out and start Norman Powell. But now, the tougher question. It's easy to look at Norman Powell's stats and go, okay, that guy's a starter. That guy is worthy of starting a game. Now you look at the team. Okay, if Norman Powell's good enough to start, who do you bench? Because you got Kyle Lowry, who's been an all-star for 6 years in a row. And honestly, his stats have been better than last season, which bode well to making potentially a 7th straight all-star game. However, Fred VanVleet is the leading scorer on the Raptors. He's been fantastic this season. Had his couple, bad games in a little stretch, but had his bad games here and there, has bad performances here and there. But over the course of the season, Fred VanVleet has been spectacular on offense, been great. Again, leading point scorer on the Toronto Raptors. And also, Fred VanVleet is certainly making himself an outside contender to be on an all-defense team. His defense in the guard positions is fantastic. So who do you take out? Kyle Lowry, statistically wise, maybe you'd take him out and start Fred VanVleet at the point guard position. But, Kyle Lowry is not a stats player. We know this. Kyle Lowry has never been the statistical player. Sure, his stats have been great, and they are continuing to be great, but he offers so much more than just what the stats show you. Kyle Lowry is a serial winner. He gets winning done. He does those little things, those gritty things during the game to help swing momentum, to help turn a possession, to help get the Raptors in better positions to win the game. Now, the Raptors haven't done too much winning this season at 7-11, but Kyle Lowry clearly has an impact on this team. And early on in the season, before his injury, he was one of the most consistent players that you could consistently rely on every night to produce a good performance. Fred VanVleet is a little bit more inconsistent. Sometimes he'll explode for high 20s amount of points, and sometimes he'll have an off night where he only gets about 10, 11 points. And that happens to any player, not just Fred, that happens to any player. But, Kyle Lowry, it's very hard to make a case to take him out. I don't think you can take out Kyle Lowry. I think that what makes the most sense in this situation, and it would really pain me to do this, obviously I want to start Norm, but do I really want to put Fred VanVleet on the bench just to make that happen? It's a very difficult question. I think that based on the fact that the Raptors have been doing so well recently when Norman Powell has started, I would try. I'm prepared to take that leap of faith and attempt to see if that is a key to turning this Raptors record around, to turning this 7-11 record. And admittedly, the Raptors have been much better recently, 6-3 in their last 9 games. So obviously they've lost the last 2, but the next 3 games, tonight against Sacramento, then backs-to-backs versus the Orlando Magic. That's 3 wins for the taking. Obviously, those teams have their players, but that is 3 wins. That is 3 games that the Raptors are looking at as games they should be winning to get back into contention in the NBA. And I absolutely think that they are capable of getting it done in these 3 games. I think that starting Norm for the game tonight against the Kings would make sense just to experiment, just to see if it makes a difference. And maybe it'll give Fred a bit of a wake-up call. He sits on the bench, obviously doesn't really need it, but would Fred start performing even better to get himself back in that starting spot? A lot of things I think would go right. I think more things would go right than wrong by giving Norman Powell the opportunity to start in this Toronto Raptors team, even when we are fully healthy. I just think eye test-wise, the Raptors, they look more balanced, and Norman Powell statistically has just been fantastic when he starts game. Fred VanVleet is a former 6th Man of the Year finalist, so, he's accustomed to coming off the bench and being great off the bench. Just because you're coming off the bench doesn't mean it limits your minutes. You still get great minutes, you just maybe don't get as many as a starter. But Norman Powell, I think, has earned that position, and he has the right to get that starting spot. Will Nick Nurse do it? Absolutely not. There's just no way Nick Nurse will do it. I honestly cannot see Nick Nurse tinkering with that system at all. Norman Powell is the 6th man on this team, but if it was up to me, Norman Powell would start tonight against the Kings. So I probably don't need to ask this, but I'd like to hear all of your thoughts and opinions on the situation in the comments down below. I know most of you are in the boat that you want Norman Powell to be a starter on his team, and sure, we can say that, but let me know who you take out of the starting lineup to make that happen. All of your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. But that wraps it up for me for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you're still here, please like the video if you liked, and subscribe to Amateur Sports for more content just like this. Like I said, tons of videos and tons of live streams every week. You will not regret subscribing to this channel. Also, consider becoming a member as we do our 2,000 subscriber giveaway for those tier 2 members. The join button is down below. But we'll live stream tonight. Make sure you are there. I hope to see a lot of you there for some fun in our watch along. At the end of the day, I believe what I say. If you disagree, that is okay. We'll see you again next time for another video.